What happens when a simple flight turns into a public spectacle for Barron Trump? A routine trip quickly turned chaotic, and no one saw the storm coming when Melania arrived. At Dallas Love Field Airport, the final boarding call echoed through the busy terminal. The loudspeaker crackled, adding to the hustle and bustle of travelers rushing to their gates. Seated near gate C-12, Barron Trump sat quietly, his tall frame awkwardly folded into a chair that looked too small for him. He kept his head down, scrolling through his phone, trying to go unnoticed. At 17, his life was far from normal, yet he had learned how to blend into a crowd. But today, that skill would be put to the test. A gate agent, an older man with sharp features and a stern expression, approached. His eyes scanned the priority boarding area and landed on Barron. Something about the teenager's calm, detached demeanor seemed to irritate him. The agent's voice cut through the noise around them. "Excuse me, young man," he said, his tone suspicious. "Are you sure you're in the right boarding group?" Barron looked up, startled but composed. "Yes, I am. I have a first-class ticket," he answered politely, his steady tone reflecting his well-mannered upbringing. The agent stared at him for a moment, his eyes drifting from Barron's phone to his casual hoodie and sneakers. "Let me see your ticket," the agent said. Barron hesitated. It wasn't the first time he had been singled out for no clear reason, but something about this man's tone felt different, more hostile. He handed over his boarding pass, his name clearly visible on the screen, Barron Trump. The agent read the name out loud, pausing for a moment. His expression shifted slightly, but instead of backing off, he became more serious. "Wait here," the agent said. People around them began to notice. Whispers spread through the crowd like a low hum of curiosity. Barron felt his cheeks grow warm, but he kept his face calm and unreadable. Moments later, the agent returned, this time with a supervisor by his side. "There seems to be an issue with your ticket," the agent said, his voice firm. "You'll need to step aside while we sort this out." Barron frowned. "What issue? I booked this ticket weeks ago." The supervisor spoke up before the agent could respond. "We're handling it, sir. Please move away from the gate." Reluctantly, Barron stepped aside, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on him. Some passengers had already pulled out their phones, quietly recording the scene. The quiet whispers grew louder, turning into a murmur of curiosity and speculation. Barron leaned against a nearby column, watching other passengers board without any problems. The stares from the gate staff and the murmuring crowd seemed to get heavier with every passing second. His frustration grew, but he kept it inside. He didn't want to cause a scene, but it was clear this situation wasn't calming down. It was only getting worse. Barron shifted his weight from one foot to the other, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. He had no idea what was taking so long. Was this about his last name? Or was it something else entirely? He wasn't the type to jump to conclusions, but the way this was unfolding felt personal. After several minutes, the supervisor finally returned. His expression remained serious. "We're unable to verify your identity through the system. Do you have another form of identification?" Barron furrowed his brow. "My passport is in my carry-on bag. You didn't even check it." The supervisor hesitated, clearly caught off guard by Barron's logical response. But instead of admitting the mistake, he stuck to his story. "Sir, this isn't just about ID. There are procedures we need to follow." "Procedures?" Barron repeated, his tone calm but filled with disbelief. "What procedures? I've flown through this airport dozens of times without any issues." The gate agent from earlier stepped in again. "We've had some irregularities lately. You're not being singled out." But his eyes told a different story. Barron wasn't buying it, and neither were a few passengers nearby. A woman in her late 40s, balancing a toddler on her hip, finally spoke up. "What's the problem? He's just a kid with a ticket. Let him board." The supervisor ignored her, keeping his focus on Barron. "You'll need to wait here while we conduct a further review. If you don't comply, we'll have to escalate the matter." "Escalate?" Barron echoed, his patience wearing thin. "What exactly are you escalating? I've done nothing wrong." As if on cue, 2 airport security officers appeared. Barron's chest tightened, not from fear, but from sheer disbelief at how quickly things were spiraling out of control. The officers positioned themselves on either side of him, their presence drawing even more attention. Phones were out now, recording every second of the scene. "Sir, please come with us," one officer said in a calm, measured tone. "We just need to ask you a few questions." Barron exhaled, his jaw tightening as he grabbed his carry-on bag. "Fine." He followed the officers through the terminal and into a small, sterile room near the gate. The whispers and flashes of phone cameras trailed behind him like a storm cloud. Inside, the officers asked him to sit at a plain table. The air in the room felt colder, heavier. One officer began flipping through Barron's passport. "This is ridiculous," Barron muttered under his breath, shaking his head. One of the officers glanced up. "We're just following protocol, son." But that word, protocol, was starting to sound more like an excuse for something else. Something unspoken. Something that didn't feel right. The more they questioned him, the more Barron began to sense an unspoken bias hanging in the room like a shadow. But what Barron didn't know was that someone else was already on her way, and she wasn't happy. In the back seat of a black SUV speeding toward the airport, Melania Trump was on the phone, her voice firm and unwavering. "Get me the head of airport security, now." Weaving through Dallas traffic, Melania Trump sat poised, her phone in hand. She had planned a quick trip to the airport to surprise her son after his flight, but as her phone buzzed with a flood of text messages and social media alerts, her calm expression shifted to one of concern. One message caught her eye. "Something's going on with Barron at the airport. People are posting videos." Her fingers flew across the screen as she pulled up a short clip. It showed Barron surrounded by security, being led away from the gate. Melania replayed the video twice, her brow furrowing deeper each time. "Driver, please hurry," she said, her voice cool but commanding. Meanwhile, back at the airport, Barron sat alone in the small room, staring at the blank wall in front of him. The officers had stepped out to verify his credentials, leaving him to sit in silence. He wasn't sure who to call or what to do. His hands rested on the table, his fingers tapping lightly, an absent rhythm he didn't even notice he was making. When he finally focused, an absent rhythm he didn't even notice he was making. Suddenly, the door opened. The same supervisor from earlier walked in, his expression unreadable. "We're still working on clearing up the situation," the man said, avoiding eye contact. "It shouldn't be much longer." Barron frowned. "How much longer?" The supervisor hesitated. "I'm not sure." "How much longer?" Barron asked, his tone sharp. "You've had all my information for almost an hour." The supervisor hesitated, mumbling something about procedures again, before retreating out the door. Barron exhaled, running a hand through his hair in frustration. This wasn't about a ticket or ID anymore. It felt like something deeper, something he couldn't quite put into words. Outside the terminal, Melania's black SUV pulled up to the curb. She stepped out with an air of authority, her posture commanding despite her simple, understated outfit. Heads turned as she strode through the airport, the steady click of her heels echoing off the polished floor. She didn't need to announce her presence. People simply moved aside as she passed, recognizing her instantly. Approaching the gate where the incident had occurred, Melania was met with a wave of murmurs and whispers. Some passengers pointed toward the area where security had taken Barron. She approached a nearby airline employee. "Excuse me," she said, her tone cool but firm. "Where's my son?" The employee blinked, momentarily stunned by her directness. "Ma'am, I'll need to check." Melania didn't wait for a response. She moved forward, her eyes scanning the area for any sign of Barron. When she spotted a small room with security officers nearby, her pace quickened. Inside, Barron sat at the table, still waiting in silence. The door opened, and the two officers from earlier stepped back in.